Welcome to Marveling at the MCU, a podcast that mixes geekdom with nostalgia as a comic book geek and a film nerd rewatch the movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm Dave O'Hara and I'm the resident comic book geek.
My name is Ollie Lewington and I'm a film nerd.
Today we're talking about Black Widow, which was first released in July 2021. It was directed by Kate Shortland and written by Eric Pearson, from stories by Jack Schaefer and by Ned Benson.
So, Dave, Black Widow, thumbs up, thumbs down, or meh?
I am going to surprise myself and probably lots of people by actually saying I'm going to give this a thumbs up. I'm not expecting you to reciprocate that.
It's so difficult.
Honestly,
all right. Yes, thumbs up.
Yeah, because
I'm going to start this phase by being
I'm going to be optimistic, and I think it's possibly because obviously when this came out, I don't think I watched it properly when it came, because it went, it wasn't in the cinema straight away, or it was, and I didn't see it in the cinema either way. And I don't know, I just don't think I gave it a fair enough shout the first time. And when I was, I'm going to say forced, made to watch it again for this.
Chose to watch it again. You chose to do this.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But no, I honestly, I really, really enjoyed it. Apart from the mess at the end, but we'll get to that.
Yes, we will get to that.
Yeah.
And aside from that, I think I had a very similar view coming into it. I was like, well, this was a complete mess of a film and it was absolutely dreadful, and we've got to watch it again and try to not be too nasty to it. And then I watched it and I was like, oh, this is actually really good.
This is really good. It's really fun. It's got the right level of humour, it's got a lot of action, and it's cool exploring characters we haven't seen. It was a kind of spy thriller-esque thing rather than being too superhero-esque, but at the same time being very Marvel. So yeah,
all of those things. So Black Widow is the 24th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's the first film of the multiverse saga. But I do feel like I have to qualify this slightly.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you go to Disney Plus, which I would imagine most people who listen to this podcast will be watching them through Disney Plus, the organization of the sagas says that the multiverse saga actually starts with 3 TV shows.
Yeah.
So WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki, before we actually get to Black Widow. And it's also much more of a standalone film than pretty much anything in the MCU, certainly so far. Even something like Ragnarok, for example, which we talked about being slightly odd in its like tone and stuff, even Ragnarok fits into the timeline, the sacred timeline, in a more direct way than this film does. That was very much by design. Kevin Feige wanted any Widow film to be a standalone film, as well as wanting to avoid an origin story, because Marvel felt like that's what everyone would be expecting. So they wanted to do it differently.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly odd film in that sense, and it's slightly odd in the development towards it and Natasha's development as well. So Black Widow as a character for the cinema actually started all the way back in 2004 when Lionsgate bought the rights to make a Natasha Romanoff film, and they attached David Hayter to write and direct. David Hayter was the writer of the original Bryan Singer X-Men and X-Men 2. So it was a pretty solid choice to make this as a film. And as we talked about way back at the start of this podcast, Marvel eventually started kind of claiming back the rights to most of its characters. And they got Black Widow back in 2006 after Lionsgate chose not to put the David Hayter version of Black Widow into production. After the start of the MCU, the whole conversation about a Black Widow solo movie didn't come up again until 2014, I guess because Marvel had wanted to see how she kind of played as a character. And we've talked about before the whole kind of women leading Marvel movies and complications around that. But also, by the point that they decided they wanted to do a solo movie for Black Widow, it's 2014, they're fully committed to the build up towards Infinity War. I mean, they're only, 2 years out from starting filming on Infinity War and Endgame. So they had plans for all of the films leading up to it. The writing was also slightly drawn out, slightly torturous process, with all of the writers that we mentioned at the top, all three of them, turning in full drafts of a screenplay. But Eric Pearson was finally the one getting the screenplay credit on his own. And he was a bit of a Marvel veteran by this point. So it's his second official credit in the MCU. His first was for Thor Ragnarok, but he had been part of their writers program from back in the early 2010s, and he'd done uncredited rewrites on a bunch of the Phase 1 and Phase 2 films before we even got to this point. And he also wrote a bunch of the one-shots and 8 episodes of Agent Carter as well. So, he's part of this world, and I think that kind of comes through and is probably a good choice for something like a standalone movie for a character as loved as Black Widow. Finally, we can't talk about Black Widow without talking about the pandemic, because it was the first Marvel film directly affected by the pandemic. Even though they managed to complete the shoot in 2019 before the pandemic began, they had to push back the release of the film. So it was originally scheduled for May 2020, and then it was actually pushed back 3 times in total until it was released in cinemas in July 2021 and simultaneously released on Disney Plus as a premium subscription thing. There were a lot of films around that time that had a kind of similar process where everyone kind of thought, oh, well, in a few months, the cinemas will be open again, so we can release it in, September. And then they've gone, nothing's open still. Let's try December. So July was when they eventually got there. The significance of splitting it between the cinema release and the Disney Plus release was hugely important for Scarlett Johansson. So while she was reported to have earned the highest salary for any woman in the MCU for this film, she would also have expected a bonus based on the box office income. But because Marvel chose to make it something you could watch at home, that dramatically reduced the theatrical returns, which obviously then reduced Johansson's take-home pay. So she ended up suing Marvel to get what she felt she was owed. And they, obviously, as all of these things do, they settled with her before the case got to court. But it's still kind of seen as a bit of a landmark case in streaming and the movie industry because of this complication of the fact that they essentially amended their promise to her in her contract and broke it by splitting the release. And it seems like a tiny detail, but it was important for Marvel when it came to their choices around future releases and the contracts that they signed with stars of the films of the future. I think that Nat as a character was kind of a trailblazer within the MCU. And so it's sort of fitting that in her own way, Scarlett Johansson has been at the same time.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So that's a little bit of film nerdery. Hit me with some comic geekery.
Okay, now we actually have a fair amount of characters in this. I mean, ironically, I'm not going to talk about Black Widow because she's been introduced a very long time ago.
We sort of know who she is.
Yeah, we all know who she is. We've done that, so we don't need to. So we'll go with Yelena, who first appeared in Inhumans, Volume 2, in January 1999, so like a while ago. She was a Russian super spy, basically to be a kind of Black Widow in the Red Room. So, this is all, I guess, fairly obvious in a way. She was obsessed with Nat, with the traitorous Black Widow Nat, and kind of went really hardcore on the training to try and kind of surpass her idol. Like, importantly, she went all in on the physical training, but didn't really match that with the psychological training that she had, which kind of comes up later in the stories. But essentially, in the long and short of it, to teach her a lesson, Nat designed this kind of cruel scheme to show her that being a spy meant being used and it bore no glory or heroism. It had like a reluctant daredevil being involved, a bit of Spycraft's face switching with Black Widow, being kidnapped with shields, and obviously Nick Fury, and ultimately this caused Yelena to sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, ultimately it's called Yelena to go alone and walk her own path. So she's done a bit of time as working as a shield agent for a corrupt faction. She got like really wounded in the Savage Land, which surprisingly has yet to turn up in the MCU, which is a very X-Men-y thing though, so we'll see. AIM were involved in her kind of story next. Obviously, if we remember advanced idea mechanics from Iron Man 3, they helped, inverted commas, her transforming her, kind of thing, making her basically into a weapon to attack the Avengers. So she stayed with AIM for a while, kind of, climbing the ranks, became in charge of her own nation in the end. Barbuda. And
Nice.
I'm pretty sure that's a made-up MCU one. Not sure.
No, Barbuda's a real.
Is it real? There you go. That's my geography knowledge. Awful. But she becomes in charge of it a bit, and then
there's something slightly problematic about it because it's a Caribbean island, which means there's a white woman who's been given a country to.
Well, it's AIM, and AIM aren't exactly good people. They're like
true.
evil science nerds, so it's not like it was a democratic process anyway. But she basically she ends up being killed in a war between AIM and Shield, and the Avengers are involved as well. But because comics, she does get resurrected because in the comic, the hand wave is that the Red Room can resurrect its best agents with cloning, which includes Nat. So Black Widow kind of puts a stop to this in her kind of story, but they do manage to make a clone of Yelena herself, kind of thing, who then becomes an ally to Black Widow and takes on the title of White Widow, and kind of trains young female spies to help for the fend for themselves, which almost is reflected in the film. So it's quite, because she gets in the white get up and stuff like that. So that's quite cool. We have next old Red Guardian himself, Alexei, and I'll be honest, his full name, I'm not pronouncing that. Alexei Andreyevich Shostakov. Yeah, something like that. I'm awful with these, as Steve will know. But anyway, he first appeared in Avengers issue like 43 in like 1967. His film Super Soldier background seems to have been an inspiration from the Ultimate Universe counterpart, which obviously I'll talk about a lot. The difference being that in the Ultimates, he's actually a proper psychopath, where in this, he wasn't. Like in the Ultimate version, he has a shield made out of human remains, so a bit mental. But the comic version, as in the non-Ultimate version one, he was like a test pilot, one of the Soviet Union's like super test pilots. And because of his like extraordinary skill, he was chosen for a secret, dangerous flight tests. He was a decorated hero of the Soviet Union and married the equally famous ballerina Black Widow, Natalie. Formerly Natasha Romanoff. So this is before she's Black Widow. And the KGB decided that they'd made really good special operatives. So while Alexei was away from home, he was basically told of the state's new plans for him, and told that then he could have no contact with his past friends or acquaintances, even his own wife. And meanwhile, a Soviet official told Nat that her husband had died in an explosion of, blah, 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 of an experimental rocket. She was so distraught. She said, "Oh, I wish I could do something to be worthy of her memory." And they were like, "Haha, come be the Black Widow." Essentially, I mean, these backstories have been retconned many times, so whatever it originally was, but that's one of these. So essentially, Alexei becomes Red Guardian. So in this, he's playing her dad. In the comics, their husband and wife. He basically gets trained to be Red Guardian, who's like Soviet Union's Captain America, basically, which is very obvious. He does become a massive douchebag during the years of training. So his personality proper shifts, but there's kind of like this cool mission involving China, who they basically made this mind control type MacGuffin thing called the Psychotron, because comics, and the Soviets wanted to prove it worked, and but basically they came in contact with the Avengers, which included Black Widow, and for this assignment, the KGB basically put the Red Guardian under orders from Colonel Ling, who's the very Chinese named Chinese dude. Essentially, Black Widow gets captured. The fellow Avengers try and rescue her. When they turn up, Red Guardian sees an opportunity to finally face off against Cap. So they fight while Cap's beating Red Guardian. The Chinese colonel basically electrified the grid the captain was standing on and knocking him out, which pissed off Red Guardian because it's like, that was my fight. What are you getting involved with it for? Ling tried to kill Black Widow, who was attempting to, destroy the MacGuffin, but Red Guardian still loved her and kind of stopped her, basically. So Ling shot him instead. Ling then sees Hercules carrying the unconscious Captain America to safety. He's like aiming his gun at him, and as Red Guardian's dying, he's like, he doesn't allow Ling to kill a brave but helpless opponent, and so he's with his final bit of energy, he shoves Ling aside. The laser beam hits some gas marks, and boom, in a resulting explosion in a very Bond villain-esque. It triggers an eruption of the supposedly dead volcano. It's very comic books. And the whole thing is destroyed, including Red Guardian and Ling. He does come back because comic books. I think he came back as a life model decoy for a bit, and at the moment he is technically alive. I can't remember how he comes alive, but he is. He's crossed paths with Lena a few times, and he's currently in the Thunderbolts. Flash forward to the film, but we're not there yet.
So he is currently in Thunderbolts in the comics.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes. Cool. I mean, the Thunderbolts roster changes all the time because that's the kind of point of it. It's like a last chance redemption thing for villains, essentially, which we'll I imagine get to when the film's released.
Yes, we might.
So I've got an honourable mention here for a character who's in it for like 4 seconds. Oksana, being the widow in the film who dies escaping, the one who kind of essentially triggers Yelena's release.
Yeah.
With the kind of red flashy stuff. She was one of the teachers of Nat, basically. In a long and short, I mean, I do actually have quite a lot written on her, but I don't really need to go in here. Essentially, she defected to the United States and kind of asked her elderly teacher forgiveness for not being able to keep her promise to become a ballerina. She said nothing to apologise, and essentially she was a KGB tutor. So I guess more, I mean, may even cut all this out, who knows. Essentially, it's more to underline the point that the widow, she's an actual comic character kind of thing. So it's just a nice little touch that she is an actual person. We have a very short one on Melina, and she was an agent of the Russian government who eventually left Russia to become a freelance mercenary and an assassin, codenamed the Iron Maiden. Don't have much on her. Dreykov, old Ray Winston, he's not actually, he's nothing from the comics. He's basically an amalgamation of various kind of Russian baddies, due to like constant retcons as well as the very vague nature of who exactly ran the Red Room. He's basically meant to serve as a singular villain in the kind of film, but he kind of incorporates it all with various named Russian agents, all in one kind of thing, basically. So he's like a cocktail bad guy. We have Rick Mason, who's again a little part in this. So he's the dude who like supplies Black Widow with all of her stuff. In the comics, he's known as the Agent. He was a mercenary who was a very covert op and freelance agent who specialised in kind of non-lethal handling of superhumans. He's also the son of Phileas Mason, i.e. the Tinkerer, who we see in Spider-Man working for the Vulture. So that's him. We also have Ursa Major, who, again, very, very small part. He's the dude who's arm wrestling with Red Guardian. He is a Russian mutant who possesses the ability to transform into a brown bear. And he has bear tattoos on his, the character does as well. Yes. And they did say in a kind of, I think, behind the scenes that yes, that is Ursa Major. And so along with Crimson Dynamo, who gets a name check in a bit of a joke in this, he's a member of the Winter Guard, which a Russian superhero team, which Red Guardian has been on. So again, he is an actual person. Another brief one we see right at the end, Valentino Allegra della Fontaine. she is the one, like literally in the after credit scenes. The Countess, she's a kind of alleged Italian noblewoman who joins Shield, basically ascends to the temporary rank of deputy director, becoming kind of Nick Fury's lover. Eventually, she infiltrates Hydra, assuming the identity of Madame Hydra, and actually, though, she was a Russian triple agent. So
Crikey.
it's all messy. Yeah, so having worked for Leviathan as a sleeper agent before being recruited by Shield, so it'll be interesting to see where they go with her in the kind of, because she's popped up a lot in the TV shows, because she's definitely in Hawkeye, and I'm trying to think which one she's in now. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, she's in that. So she's shown up a few times, and obviously in Thunderbolts and this. And finally, we'll go with this one. For me, was controversial because it irritated me. Taskmaster. So they're different. So Antonio Dreykov in the film is Taskmaster. In the comics, it's Anthony or Tony Masters. He's a mercenary hired as a training instructor by various criminal organizations such as Hydra, AIM, and he has the uncanny ability to mimic the fighting moves of his opponents. So some of the people he's copied include, but not limited to, Ant-Man, Black Knight, Black Panther, Black Widow, Bullseye, Cap, Captain Marvel, Daredevil, Elektra, Falcon, Hawkeye, Iron Fist, Iron Man, Moon Knight, Punisher, Shang-Chi, Spider-Man, and US Agent. He also trained US Agent, Crossbones, and the Red Skull. And yeah, so, but behind the scenes, apparently it was going to be Tony Masters in the comic books, but they scrapped it because the film was meant to be a spy thriller with, Dreykov as the main villain. And while dealing with the mystery of the daughter, they basically merged them into the same character, which I've made peace with now, because it honestly genuinely really annoyed me, because I was like, why are you messing with him? Just have Taskmaster. All he is going to be as a grunty bad guy to fight. Why do you have to mess with him? Just use him as he is. But I'm okay with it now, because as I've kind of realised, like I say, because it's not Tony Masters, so it doesn't matter. They could bring Tony Masters in at another point. I'm well aware that Steve is shouting right now at the podcast while listening to this, because he doesn't care about him, because he's just like a C-grade villain. But I like him because he's in the Deadpool comics a lot and stuff like that, and I like him.
Whereas I have completely different issues with Taskmaster, which we'll talk about when we get there.
Oh, definitely, and I'm sure I'll probably agree with him. But Taskmaster in the comics, he's like, he frequently goes against Deadpool, and Deadpool beats him up by having no style to copy, because Deadpool has no style. And but he has little energy gauntlets that can kind of replicate things like Cap's shield, Wolverine's claws, Elektra's size, stuff like that. So he's a really good, cool guy to fight and to be a kind of a baddie. But hey ho, they didn't do it. It's fine. I will get over it. There you go. And I think that's everyone. A brief overview of everyone.
A brief overview of everyone. Yeah. Marvelous. Well, should we get into our breakdown then?
Let's do it. So we open on a flashback to Ohio in 1995 with kids playing in the street. So we've got young Natasha, played by Ava Anderson, and young Yelena, played by Violet McGraw, are playing outside when Yelena hurts her knee and Nat comforts her. Their mum, Melina, played by the awesome Rachel Weisz, comes and teaches them that basically a really dull lesson about bioluminescence, and they go for dinner.
And completely pointless.
Completely pointless and random, doesn't have any impact in the film whatsoever. You'd think it was almost like they'd call back to that at some point. No, nothing. Yeah, it's just basically saying he's a bit of a science nerd. I think that's what it says, yeah. Then you see their dad, Alexei, played by David Harbour, come back, and it kind of comes up almost like normal family scene is interrupted by him saying they have to run away, and even though they don't want to, Nat's a bit angry about it, but they basically rapidly kind of decamp into the car, and you see that Alexei's stolen a floppy disk, which is the height of sophistication back then.
Oh yeah,
none of this USB drive stuff.
Think of the amount of data you could fit on a floppy disk.
2 megabytes or something like that. It's insane. Yeah, Yelena wants kind of American Pie on the car stereo, and I love this scene, by the way. I think it's just a lovely kind of, the tension starts building up as they're kind of getting closer to their little airfield. Nat grabbing a photo from the car. They hop into the little plane. You get that very casual moment where Alexei just flips this massive thing that's in the way, and obviously no one bats an eyelid about it. He's super strong, and then you can see these nameless black cars arrive, so the bad guys turn up while they're kind of taking off, getting away.
It's
so
a very good opening sequence, isn't it?
The tension is great.
I'm
it's a good scene.
Convinced about the bit that follows it into the credits and stuff, but this opening sequence is so well put together. Apart from the bioluminescence bollocks,
yeah, exactly. You can
the rest of it is so cleverly done and tells you so much about so many of the characters. Even the little things of Alexei just chucking a thing out the way, and you're like, oh, okay, so he's like a superhero dude.
Yeah. Like I say, it ends with Melina getting a bit shot. Nat helps them kind of fly away. They arrive next in Cuba, and we see a General Dreykov. So we see a young Ray Winston, Alexei as the Red Guardian. Kind of again establishes he wants his suit back and no more undercover work. They take Melina away for a bit of medical, but then Nat kind of grabs, because they start kind of separate the girls essentially, don't they? And then Nat kind of does a big sistery thing, grabbing the gun to protect her. Alexei kind of basically talks her down, and then they get injected and taken away. And then we get the kind of opening credits, which I really liked. Just a very almost we take them being grown up kind of thing to the cover to is it Malia J's cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit?
Yes, yeah.
I love this. I think it's brilliant, but I suspect you don't.
I don't hate it. I just don't love it. Like, it's grand. I really like the cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit. I think it's got a really like haunting quality to it, and it does exactly what you want the music to do at this point. And obviously, being set in 1995, it's also completely like era appropriate as well. And so it works very nicely. If I'm honest, I found it a bit boring, the credits, and it felt a little bit artsy-fartsy, but like, I don't hate it.
Yeah. After we do all that kind of thing, we flash forward 21 years later, which we establish, because they kind of make some name drops quite quickly, don't they? So it's 2016, so just after Civil War, because they talk about basically they mention the Accords pretty quickly. We're trying to establish, clue the audience in where we are, because we obviously know we're probably before Infinity War, and obviously Endgame, but after Civil War. So we get Secretary Ross, played by William Hurt, sending in a team to capture the now adult Natasha, played by Scarlett Johansson. He kind of name drops that they've got Barton, Wilson, and Scott Lang. So you can kind of establish this is just after the airport scene, and that she has no friends. She kind of talks a bit, says, she's done. And then while they attack, it turns out, obviously, big switcheroo. She is somewhere completely different. Proper spycraft stuff here. She's on a ferry somewhere else.
And this is also, very sadly, William Hurt's last appearance as Secretary Ross.
Yes, which is like when I think back on it now, watching it now, thinking, oh yeah, it was really sad.
And and
he doesn't even get big. He's only in it for like 5 seconds in the start of the end.
Yeah, he is. He's not in it much, but it's that thing of, like any actor like William Hurt, he carries so much weight, and it's so much better having him for 5 minutes than some random secondary
some random
character
dude
actor being
some
angry
random
person,
dude.
And especially because of the way they've carried Ross through Infinity War and Endgame and everything else. It's it's a big one.
We jump to Morocco next. So we have 2 Black Widow-esque looking people sizing up a target with sniper rifles. So we get the adult Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, and Ingrid, played by Nana Blondell.
Yep,
that's right. There you go. So Yelena basically, because the target realizes being followed, Yelena catches her, and this is Oskana, who played by Michelle Lee, who I briefly gave honourable credit, whether it made it into the cut or not, is an actual character.
Well,
she's an actual person,
doesn't it?
She's an actual. Well, this will be funnier now if you cut that bit out, because people will go, "What the hell are you about?" But essentially, she is an actual character in Black Widow's history. So it was a nice little touch here. But they fight, and Yelena quite brutally kills her, actually. But when she's dying, she manages to get sprayed with some magical red mist, which frees her. And you can see her kind of shock and confusion, I guess. Almost like she's waking up from a dream.
Yes,
and then she gets
and kind of realize she's actually a baddie.
Yeah, so she's a baddie and she's just killed someone, and she feels like, and you can see she's like, how can I help you? And she's like, oh yeah, too much. And then essentially she gets her mission. So Oskana tells her to kind of free the others. Yeah, so Yelena takes the magical case of cures, cuts out the obligatory tracker, and runs away.
It's quite gross. They're like cutting the tracker out of her leg as well.
Yeah,
like,
it's
that's
proper.
quite full on as well.
I mean, like I say, the little fight they did was quite kind of handsy and brutal. It was especially when she kind of stabs her and proper twists the knife and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But next, so Ingrid calls calls in the defection, and calls for Taskmaster, who is played by Olga, and you're going to tell me the surname.
Olga Kurilenko.
There you go, because she's been in loads of things, but I can never pronounce her name. But we don't know this yet. All we know is it's a person in a suit, right. And we don't even know male or female. I mean, again,
yes, we do.
Do we know?
Yes, we do. It's a man.
Very bulky.
It's a man. So this is, I was going to say,
is this a thing that irritates you?
It was so the only person credited with Taskmaster in the credits is Olga Kurilenko.
Yep.
It is not Olga Kurilenko. She is Taskmaster for about 30 seconds in the office at the end when she takes the helmet off and you can see her face. It's a man. There is no way you can look at Olga Kurilenko as an actor and Taskmaster and think that they are the same person. It's a man.
Do you think
it's not fair on
the dude who played
the stunt people who doubled Taskmaster to claim that it's Olga Kurilenko the whole way through? It's just can you tell? It really makes me angry.
I can tell. Do you remember I was saying how originally it was good? Because, like I say, originally he was going to be separate people. Do you think it was actually late in the thing when they decided to merge the characters?
No.
Or do you think it was earlier and they just thought, no, we'll get a male stuntman to do it, and then we'll try and double bluff the audience into thinking it is a man until to try and hide the reveal?
I think that's the whole thing, is that particularly for the audience of comic geeks who know Taskmaster,
yes,
it's to create that like, oh, gotcha kind of twist moment. Yeah. It's just like, and it does work, but it works because Taskmaster is so clearly a man that when she unmasks herself, you go, oh, but you're a man. Anyway. So we finally find out that Nat's in Norway, and we get a slightly more on the nose explanation of where everything stands, civil war. So Nat's kind of living in a caravan trailer thing, being supplied by Mason, who's played by Oti Fagbenle, with she's being supplied with things like spare passports and everything that she needs to live off the grid. He tries to be friendly with her, but she's totally not into it.
Hashtag friend zone.
Yes. But I mean, not even friend zone. It's like acquaintance zone. And he has got her stuff out of the Budapest safe house and tells her that someone else is in there now. A very important note coming from someone married to a Hungarian. It actually, both of them are wrong when they start arguing over how you say Budapest, because it's Budapest. It's not Budapest or Budapest. It is Budapest. I just had to throw that in, otherwise I'd get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when she puts that like box of stuff in the car, because she's clearly going to go and throw it away.
Yeah.
We see that the black case with the like cures in it is in the box amongst all the kind of mail and everything else that he got out of the safe house. She has to go and get some fuel for the generator, and she gets attacked on the bridge by Taskmaster.
Yeah.
She thinks it's like Ross has sent someone to come and get her, and she's kind of like, you're not going to get me that easily. And then they have a proper scrap on the bridge, and I really liked it because and I love the design of this fight, because they really do show how Taskmaster imitates people.
Yeah.
Not just Nat, but there are some real signature moves of other Avengers in there at the same time.
Yes.
And the way that they layer that up, of Taskmaster clearly thinking through the process of like, okay, so I can't beat her as Cap, maybe I can beat her as her, maybe I can beat her as Black Panther was one of them as well. And it's like there are a few little iconic bits where you're like, oh, okay, I can see what you're doing there.
Yeah, it's a very Taskmastery thing, and that's why that's what I think is a cool character, because
Yes.
and it's just an interesting concept as well, because like in the actual dude, basically he can replicate anything he sees. It's less obviously in this, it seems to be a chip in the back of stuff like that, but his kind of, it's not a mutant power, but his power is, like I say, he can anything. So if he, for example, and it doesn't go with just combat, it can be anything. So if he watches a down slope skier, he can do it.
Yeah.
If he watches a chef cooking something, he can do it. That kind of stuff. But the backfire is that the more stuff he watches, it almost like it overwrites his memories. So he kind of forgets who he is essentially, and that's like the curse behind it. So yeah, so like what he can recall and do and stuff like that. But he's a cool character. That's why I like him.
It's an interesting portrayal here, then, isn't it? That they've sort of taken a lot of the super out of Taskmaster. That it's just
because ultimately he is just a man.
Chip, but but
like, as in the actual Taskmaster also isn't super strong. He just fights the same as Bun. So like he could copy the Hulk, but he wouldn't have the Hulk strength. He just that's the thing. So he just copies it, which is why it actually works again as a Black Widow level bad guy. It works because it's not all about superpowers. Hence why, like you say, it's really nice seeing the different fighting styles, and because you see. Have we seen the scene yet where you see Taskmaster just watching video clips of?
Yeah, so that's when it first gets phoned in.
Yes, that's it, and that's
a little bit earlier.
And I guess that's just to alert you, the audience, that they're studying a fight thing, and then when you see those styles again on the bridge,
it does sort of. I hadn't thought about it until literally right this second, but it does sort of negate the whole chip in the head thing. Like they're showing Taskmaster watching videos and learning styles.
I suspect the chip is what's like doing it, because they don't really explain into it. Because she's his daughter. She doesn't have any mutant powers or special superpowers as far as we're aware. Mm-hmm. So it's entirely. I think it's implied that he's basically rebuilt her. So that's what the chip's doing, and so because it's saying she watches everything and stuff. So that's why I implied that's where she gets her mimicky stuff from.
And there's an element of like mind control echoes there, isn't there? But I also couldn't watch that scene or that moment without watching them plug the thing in the back, and my brain just went, I know Kung Fu.
Yeah, fair one. Yeah, just download it.
But anyway, back to the scene at hand. So they have it's a really good scrap. I really enjoyed it. Then she sort of realizes that the Taskmaster is only there for the vials of stuff.
Yeah.
And so she kind of doesn't know anything about it, but she grabs them out of the box before she gets kicked off the bridge, which is a nice brutal kicking off the bridge as well. And then when she kind of gets to the riverbank, she looks down at the vials and realizes that they've been sent to her by Yelena, because they've got the photograph that she gave Yelena right back in
the credits
when they were first separated at the beginning and in the credits. And that is about as formulaic as you get when it comes to an act break into Act 2. It's the kind of setting up every single thing that's going to be important in the story up to now, and the vials and the photo of Yelena are what kind of push Nat off into the next part of this film. They kind of give her mission for the film, or for this next step, which is to go and find Yelena and say, what the smeg are these things
exactly
you've sent me through the post, and why is someone trying to kill me?
So then after this, we are now off to the safe house in Budapest.
Budapest.
Damn it. Okay, where Nat and Yelena have a massive, fairly brutal again scrap kind of thing. Really well done.
It's so good, and it is brutal. It's. I think it's the most kind of down and dirty, realistic fight that we've seen in the MCU so far.
Yeah, it's again, like you say, it's no superpowers here. It's two highly trained kind of assassins going at each other. Also with the whole kind of sisterly thing, and they again, it's very well done in that it's essentially a draw because they basically finish with them strangling each other almost.
Yes.
Before they kind of call a truce. We get the plot dump next with the where which it's got to happen, isn't it? But essentially,
it does.
Yeah, and it's not. I don't think it's badly done. I know you like a big info dump.
It's like it.
Is it
as
possible
you say,
for you?
It's got to be done because Nat has to understand how it works.
Yes,
and it's done in a fairly decent way. And I think what kind of makes it work relatively well is it starts with a massive scrap and it finishes with a massive scrap, and the plot dump is actually quite short.
Yes,
in the middle. So yes, so we've got the kind of explanation of what the red stuff is, what the fact that the red room still exists, which Nat thinks it doesn't.
Yeah, she thinks it's gone. She thinks Dracov's dead. He's not.
And for the first time, we understand what the Budapest mission was. The Budapest mission that we first heard about back in the first Avengers film.
I'd say which is where Dracov was technically first mentioned, wasn't he? So like he's as a villain, he's been set up for a while, really. In the MCU, but yeah.
Yes, and so basically we learned that she
blew her
killed Dracov and his daughter. The point being that the daughter was collateral damage. And there's something about it that's like a bit of S.H.I.E.L.D. we haven't seen before.
Well, it's a bit of a spy, the proper like Black Ops type spy stuff, which is there, which is absolutely part of S.H.I.E.L.D. But obviously in the MCU styles, you don't see that as much. You see the forward-facing part of it, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
The holy mission style of thing. Whereas actually, again, they're a Black Ops type spy thing. They do bad things. Just they're not evil like Hydra. Although technically they were actually, weren't they? Because they were kind of infiltrated by Hydra. But yeah, so it's the whole kind of Black Ops off the books stuff that they did in like the Shadow Wars type stuff. But yeah, so it's good to highlight that.
And then that kind of that little section of plot dumping ends with widows trying to take them both out, and it's a great
sequence.
Sort of chase scene
across the rooftop.
With there's some fighting on it and some gun shooting and things like that. There's some real kind of there's real force to it as well. It's not I was going to say it's not comic book violence. You know what I mean? It's like
it is a bit brutal violence, and it kind of almost like, remember, these guys are these two are like, they're not enhanced in that respect. They're flesh and blood. You know, they're not like Thor getting thrown through a window, or Iron Man in his armor, or Cap as a super soldier. And you can tell it looks brutal, like when Nat falls down, because when they're escaping from the roof, and Ingrid's kind of hanging on, and she drops. And that's brutal. And then Nat kind of drops again, and that's not great. And she's a bit like dazed at the bottom, where we get to see, Dracov use the remote control to kind of basically make Ingrid shoot herself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, isn't it?
And I think this is part of the reason I struggle so much with the end of this film.
Yeah.
Because all of this, bar a couple of shots and a couple of sections in the car chase as well, all of this is practical stuff, and it has real impact, and it's really savage, and that just doesn't exist at the section at the end of the film.
And that is my absolute, which is like, I think we're 100% aligned on this. It is absolutely my problem with it, because up until the very end, as you say, it does feel very, I know there's CGI in it, of course I do, and stuff like that, but it does feel very practical. It fits with the mythos, it fits with the kind of spy-esque stuff. It's very brutal, it's very, as you say, grounded, and then it just goes mental. I mean, not all of the stuff in the end scenes. I do like it, but it just, especially like when it is the proper climax, it just turns into a mess of substandard CGI, which is what makes it worse because it's actually like it's not been too bad up until point. Again, there's been a few dodgy shots, but nothing like, nothing horrendous. Like, yeah, we get a cool. So, where Nat and Yelena escape on their motorbike and getting chased by a tank, basically, with the widows chasing them as well. You get, and then you get Taskmaster shooting doing his Hawkeye thing, which makes the car crash. And it looks a bit dodged. This bit
touch. I love the arrow.
The arrow's really good,
but yes, the car crash isn't.
The car crash does look a bit rubbish.
Yes.
But they leave their trail of blood to throw them off, and then they hide in the space that Nat and Clint used, which is cool. And I do like during the whole kind of escape thing, they are bickering like sisters, like siblings, and it's great. Like, it's really funny the way they interact with each other.
And we've talked so many times on this podcast about action needs to develop character, and sometimes that's developing character by showing what someone is capable of. Yep. Like the Taskmaster fight with Nat on the bridge, it's furthering character by showing us what Taskmaster can do. And then there's sequences like this, which are the ones that I love, which is where you're finding out about a character through the dialogue while they're fighting, and the whole constant bickering. It's like they have picked up exactly where they left off as kids, just bickering the whole way through, and Yelena essentially ripping it out of Nat most of the time.
Yeah, and that she's very dry and deadpan, and is the whole.
Okay, you got a plan, or shall I just stay duck and cover?
My plan was to drive us away.
It's a plan.
Yes.
It's really funny, and like, because like
Pugh is so good.
She's fantastic in this. Honestly, she is absolutely brilliant. But I like it because obviously, like, none of the other Avengers would talk to Nat like that.
Yes. Yes.
Like Clint maybe, but again, it would be different with him doing it. Whereas,
that's kind of, it's very appropriate, isn't it? Because Nat's relationship with Clint is very brother-sister.
Yeah.
And so there's the same kind of sibling dynamic between them. And yeah, it's just her delivery and the way that she carries herself in this whole film, but this sequence in particular. Florence Pugh is just hilarious.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah, no, she's really good. She's definitely one of the strongest parts of this film. I mean, this is where we get a bit of a info dump again on Yelena explaining who Taskmaster is, and where we find out now that Dreykov's daughter was in the bomb path as well. So that's what we learn.
Yes, that's right. Sorry, I got ahead of myself there.
Yeah, but that's fine. And after they kind of, like I say, Lilo, they escape. They go for their pit stop and continue their chat. Again, including about not being one of the big ones. Why Nat never contacted Yelena? You weren't really my sister, which is a bit harsh. And
it's really harsh.
But and the great conversation about the superhero pose.
Yes. So apparently,
which is, I was going to say, I know what you're going to say, and I knew this, but go on, you tell the story.
You go for it.
No, I was going to say it was her taking the piss out of her, and they thought it was funny.
Yes.
So they put it in. Yeah.
It was literally Florence Pugh taking the piss out of
Scarlett Johansson
on set.
Yeah.
That one of the writers overheard was like, "I'm so putting that in."
Yeah.
Which is great. I love it, and it is such a great exchange. The to and fro of this particular scene is great, and it's carried by both of them, because there's this kind of trying to connect again as sisters. There's like the needling kind of bickering that you get between siblings of like, I know exactly what buttons to push that's going to annoy you, like saying my brother. You're not one of the big ones, you know.
Wait, what are the big ones?
Well, I doubt the god from space has to take an ibuprofen after a fight.
And the superhero pose and everything else. But then you get these really cruel, cutting lines that come in there of like, you were never really my sister. and Yelena turning to Nat and saying, "I'm not the killer little girls call their hero." And
Yeah.
it's like those switches between the like funny stuff and then the like oof.
But like you say,
is
very
harsh.
very siblingy. As you say, you know exactly how to needle to your sibling. Yeah. So no, like I say, it's definitely one of the things that really makes the films, their interactions with each other, and especially the whole, like you say, the superior pose, which then becomes an ongoing thing. Throughout the thing, with her just called poser, and then her doing it at the end and going,
yeah, I love a good running gag.
Absolutely, exactly. And then so then we got the next kind of pit stop. They're sitting there sharing a beer, aren't they? And we get a bit more of a kind of plot dump. You know, Yelena explaining the difference between them both. So psychological conditioning versus the chemically altered brain functions after Nat left, basically. Yelena having a cover story for herself as well, and that neither of them have anywhere to go. Yeah, this is where they decide. They finalize their mission, I guess, to try and find the Red Room and really kill him, really kill Dreykov. Yeah, and then they steal a car.
Yes.
Yeah, in the car there's a bit more heart-to-hearting here, where they talk about having control over their own lives, and again we get the awesome dialogue about Yelena's vest, about it's the first thing she's ever bought with her own money and all the pockets, which is the thing that she's wearing in the other films.
Yes.
So yeah, it's really nice,
and is one of those very subtly layered things by the writers in here of it. They're talking about having control over their own lives, and it's something as tiny and to everyone else totally insignificant as buying your own clothes. That is what matters to Yelena at that moment. And so it's also partly why Nat is teasing her about it, because she knows it's going to get to her a bit. But it's beautifully layered again how they converse with each other throughout this little bit. And then obviously their next step is to get Mason to give them a helicopter.
Well, I think they wanted a jet, but he was like, you didn't give much time, here's a helicopter.
Yes. Which is another gag that will pay off.
Yes, later. Again, they're good at setting up these running little gags. Yeah. So next we're off to prison, where we get to see an older Alexei telling war stories about Captain America, and this is where he arm wrestles Ursa Major, and kind of who quite rightly calls him up on it and saying Captain America was in the ice at this point, which could be. I mean, you've got several ways around this. A, yes, he could be making it up. B, that could be Steve Rogers putting the stones back. Also, it could actually be, if we remember, because at this point, Winter Soldier's been out, and it's where you got Captain America, Truth Captain America kind of thing. Oh God, who was it? I can't remember the name of the actor. But it transpires that, because in the comics you had the Black Captain America, who was the, like, I guess, test subject before the proto serum, which no one knew about, and him. So it could have been him, because he would have been around at that point. So yeah, but no, it's really cool. Or it could have just been him making crap up.
I'm not buying the second. I'm not buying the third one.
Yeah,
the first two I could absolutely believe. Like, I've always thought of it as just being bull.
Yeah,
but actually, those ideas. No, actually, it couldn't be him putting them back, because Captain America was only putting them back at the very second they were taken.
Yes, no, good point. So he probably wouldn't have come across him.
No.
Unless, because obviously Cap stays and lives out his life.
That's true. Yeah, it could be on his way through. So it would be
his way through time.
Older Captain America, but yes. Yeah, good thinking.
But let's not get...
No, but I quite like the idea that Alexei isn't bullshitting.
Yeah, I do as well, because I really like Alexei in this. Yeah, I love him. Again, he's a good bit of comic relief.
Yes.
In it, with the amount of times where he just messes up, or... we'll get to it, but like with him messing around with the comms and stuff like that. I love it. But either way, so I guess for our point of view in this, we see that he's in prison. He's let himself go a bit because he's in prison, and no one takes him proper seriously, but he's still strong.
Mm-hmm.
I think on his tattoos, I think he's got both his kids' names are on there.
Yeah.
On his prison tats, but basically he gets he gets his mail, doesn't he? And he gets his Red Guardian action figure,
which is
the
broken.
head broken, and he pulls out the earpiece, and then you get basically you get the widow, get Yelena and Nat talking him through the escape, which is awesome. Don't make a scene. Oh, you made a scene, didn't you? As he just does it in his own way. Move your ass, super soldier.
Yes.
And then we get the kind of, basically we get the prison break, which again, loved it kind of thing. Again, I think some of the effects here are a little bit dodge, with the helicopters and some of the CGI. But I do.
It's one of the sequences that really annoy me because there are some genuinely jaw-dropping shots.
Yes, absolutely.
In this that are absolutely incredible, and
then they ruin it with some of the bad bits.
Then they ruin it with like Scarlett Johansson just like swinging through on some sort of stupid Tarzan rope thing.
Yeah, so you're right. There are some absolutely fantastic shots, and then they're ruined by some of the dodgy CGIs.
Yes,
but I loved it overall. And then we got their interaction, stuff like that. And then when they're kind of escaping, actually flying away from it.
This would be a cool way to die.
We get the very, very, again, matter of fact, when he's like, are you on your period or something? And he's like, we don't have a period, we don't have a you. And then we get the very clinical reminder of the sterilization from the Red Room and stuff like that. It's like, okay.
Do we know about Red Room sterilization yet? Oh, we do.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, because
it's in Avengers,
War, wasn't it? Yeah,
because it's in Age of Ultron, because that's
Ultron.
Where. Yeah.
Yes.
Because Nat says about, because obviously Hulk says about genetics, or Bruce and stuff. He can't have kids, and then she explains to him about what she went through and stuff like that. So yeah, we do know about it from ages ago.
And then you get like, it is the brilliant moment of them explaining it to him in really cold clinical terms, which for like certainly for dads, like our dads when we were growing up and things, if you explain any women's things to them in clinical terms, they just freak out. And I reckon most men are probably still the same.
Yeah, it's just the way she, and he's like, oh yeah, but so it's a great interaction with these guys here. Again, very much a kind of, I guess, like an absent dad feeling, but not just because they've been separated for so long, and he's really proud of them, but they're a bit like, oh, God's sake.
Yes.
And then they bring up, obviously, oh, well, why don't we go ask Mom, essentially, Melina, and, just matter-of-factly, oh, she works directly for Dreykov and still does. And they're like, oh, Mom, really? And then they're like, oh, I don't think we'll have enough fuel to make it there. And he's like, oh, no, we'll be fine. And then cue the next scene of the helicopter crashing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we do get the little ridiculousness of Alexei kind of genuinely believing that, like, there's something heartfelt about it, that he thinks he's made them the best of themselves. And it's like, I don't think that's what they're driving at, really. I'm not sure you're right.
But yeah, he's brilliant. Yeah, and then well, we're in the next act now, aren't we?
We're into the second half of the film already. We're whittling through this one. This is, I think, my favourite sequence of the whole film.
Yeah, okay, I can see that way.
From the moment that the helicopter crashes to the moment that they get taken away to the Red Room, I absolutely love this sequence.
Yep, me too. It 100% reminds me of It Is a Family Sitting Down kind of thing. The way they talk to each other all the time, or just every little thing's like Melina saying "don't slouch" to kind of Nat, Yelena sitting there completely silent.
All right, enough, all of you.
I didn't say anything. That's not fair.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Yeah,
the very awkwardness of Red Guardian getting into his old costume, which is quite clearly an effort, and them all sitting in the kind of around the table listening to him grunting. Looking really uncomfortable, and then, like, say him and Melina flirting, and he was like, "I've been in prison. I've got a lot of energy," and they were like, "Oh my god!" And you clearly like two daughters going, "No, I don't want to hear this. What are you on about?" As she gives a little kind of smile, absolutely fantastic.
And Melina also using a pig.
Yes, to demonstrate mind control.
that she's called Alexei.
Alexei, yes.
And then comes my favourite moment of this film, and we talked in Endgame about the moment when Nat has just finished talking to, or is just talking to Rhodey about where Clint is. And we talked about like how you convey emotion and the subtlety of trying the kind of trying not to convey emotion, and particularly trying not to cry.
Yeah.
And how beautifully Scarlett Johansson did it in that moment. And Florence Pugh does exactly the same thing here, as they all start kind of saying, oh, it was all fake, and there wasn't proper childhood, and like we weren't your parents and you weren't sisters and everything. And the whole way through they just keep cutting to Florence Pugh, and you can just see her heart breaking inside. And it just kind of, it piles up and piles up and piles up to the point where she just can't listen to them telling her
that it wasn't real when she thought it was.
Yeah, when it meant so much to her. And you really get the sense of like she has carried this every single day of her life. Like it's the thing that has made her human in amongst everything that she's been through. And they're saying, no, it's not true. None of it's true. It's all lie. It's all fake. And she just can't contain it anymore. And it's so heartbreaking watching her play it the way that she does. It's so good.
And you know, we get a decent amount of kind of, again, more bit backstory and films in here, like also the floppy disk which they nicked was essentially where the mind control stuff came from. You know, you get the heartbreaking thing where with again Yelena saying that was me, you know, I was under the influence of this, essentially just try and drive it home to Melina telling Nat that, you know, she was selected at birth based on genetics. Her mother didn't abandon her, which she always assumed, and that, you know, Dreykov killed her. And yeah, you get, like you say, the photo album that Melina had saved from their childhood, even though, you know, they're trying to claim it's fake, but it clearly wasn't. And then the Melina admitting she's alerted the Red Room, and
and the photo album as well. I guess we should go back to the beginning for a second, because Nat went to get the photo album when they were running away, and Melina told her not to, and just to leave it. And now obviously we come across this revelation that Melina obviously picked it up as they were going, and has kept it for the years ever since, which obviously adds another layer to that kind of family thing.
The whole family dynamic,
that actually it's not really been fake for any of them.
Yeah. And also we're greeted by Alexei trying to go make Yelena feel better, and which I love, again in his own way, and start telling a story about how his dad pissed on his hands to stop the frostbite, and just the eye rolling, and you can just tell it's like younger sibling. What, Dad? Will you stop it? What are you doing? And then he does cheer her up by singing American Pie,
and it's it's just another example of why Florence Pugh is one of the greatest actors on the planet right now. But the way that she's like deeply upset and just crying and doesn't want anything to do with anyone, and then she sort of starts singing along, and she's kind of laughing despite herself.
Like, and she's kind of conveying all this emotion without saying a lot of stuff in her the way she's acting. It's brilliant.
And it's like any child in those situations. Like, we've all been around children who have, for whatever reason, been in tears, and there are buttons that you can press that make a child giggle or kind of make something turn, and they start giggling like despite themselves, and you can see they really don't want to giggle. They want to still be angry or sad.
I've many times, sometimes it backfires, but many times I've managed to, when the girls are being a pain, swoop one of them up and give them a tickle,
exactly.
And they don't like it, but then they like it, and then they don't like it, and they're still angry, but then they laugh, and they can't help but laugh. And immediately, sometimes it does massively backfire, and they just get more pissed off. But also, sometimes it works.
And it does work so beautifully on Yelena here, doesn't it? That, Alexei is doing what dads do and kind of embarrassing her by singing American Pie, and it makes her chuckle because he's so bad at it.
But then, boom, the Red Room arrives.
Yes, basically the entirety of the Red Room arrives.
With Alexei getting knocked out by darts. Awesomely.
I love that moment. Again, it's just another little cute moment of, like, you can see him get hit with a dart and be like,
is that all? Darts. I could take more than, and then just hit by a million darts.
Exactly. And we see Taskmaster arrive.
Yep.
But basically does absolutely nothing. Yeah,
literally they do a dramatic kind of fly round, don't they? The ship kind of lands almost, or hovers, and then Taskmaster's deployed, and then that's it really, isn't it? We see Yelena finds Nat unconscious, but then just gets tranked by Melina.
Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah. And then we're waking up. Well, they kind of, because they're flying up to the Red Room, which now the big reveal is it's like a big shield helicarrier, like a kind of Sky Fortress thing.
Yes,
the kind of. They regain consciousness a little bit, or Alexei regains consciousness a little bit, and then kind of drifts off, gets injected again. You see the widows being trained inside it, and Melina goes to see Dreykov, who's waiting there with Taskmaster in the office, and Yelena being prepared for brain surgery. Is it this way she says, "Oh, this would be a rubbish way to die"?
Yeah, it'd be a much less cool way.
Much less cool. That's it. With Alexei and Nat in the holding cells. And then we get, after the little bit of back and forth with Dreykov, we get the cool spy double cross with the Black Widow, where it turns out that Nat is actually Melina.
No, other way around.
No. Sorry, Melina is Nat. There you go. Yeah.
Yes.
Switcheroo.
Nat is pretending to be Melina.
Yep.
Melina is
pretending to be Nat in the cells.
Dreykov's office.
Yeah.
And then he uncovers her. This is where it all starts slipping away for me. This is the
So I don't hate these bits.
Danger.
I think these bits are cool because this is still fun. This is still, it's literally, it's right towards the end where everything's exploding and falling apart. That's when it really goes off the rails for me. I'm cool with this bit because I love the humour. Like Alexei pouring his heart out, and then like Melina, the door just opening. He's like, oh. And then with the whole comms thing and stuff like that, and when Alexei's like, I'm having trouble hearing you all. It's like, that's because you don't have a comm, stuff like that. We didn't trust you, or we didn't have enough. and the amount of times where he's like,
it's good. It's good. I grant you, but the CGI on the masks.
Oh, did that annoy you?
Is bad, but also the pheromone lock feels like a bit of a stretch. Especially considering they'd gone to a really big effort to point out the fact that Nat was psychologically conditioned and Yelena was chemically conditioned, and now they're basically saying, well, let's pretend Nat was like slightly chemically conditioned, because that works better for us.
I think it was kind of, I agree. It is a bit of a last minute thing, but I think it was a kind of a proper fail safe from the beginning. So they've always had that, because Melina says she's got it as well, as in a proper old school thing. But it's a film MacGuffin thing, isn't it? It's why can't we beat the baddie?
It does lead to a the
awesome thing where she's getting her nose broken, which is cool. Kind of thing. I don't think we've actually said it yet, but I'm pretty sure Ray Winston was massively wasted in this film.
Yes, but when his accent was as bad as it was, I wouldn't have used much of him either.
To be fair, yeah.
I just love the fact that when Ray Winston does accents, he's like basically the first two words of the sentence are in an accent,
and then the rest of
it
it
just goes London.
Yeah.
Like,
he starts Russian and then turns But either way, so this is where we have the big double cross, or the triple cross. No, where we find out the plan. It was all plan. Yelena breaks out with some kick-ass moves. She doesn't have Alexei doesn't have his earpiece. We get the flashback to the plan about Melina kind of landing the Red Room. Or I didn't twigged this I think the first 3 times I watched it, that's when Nat says, "I'll activate my tracker the second we're in," which is to how Ross finds them, because I never twigged it the first time. I was like, how the hell is he just rocking up wherever they are? But she says it.
I did also not twig that.
Because that annoyed me of like how he conveniently magically showed up. But no, she does outright say it when they're doing their little thing.
I thought it was like I'll activate my tracker so you know where I am.
Yeah, no, it was for Ross to come in, because he would be tracing them.
Because they were in the techno box thing.
Yes.
Melina's hidden room of technology.
Hidden room tech stuff. But she says that, so that was fun.
And it kind of made me think that they were getting earpieces and trackers and everything else. But that's good.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Like I said, and again we get the funny bits with Alexei not having the earpiece and trying to confess stuff to people.
Only Melina and Yelena have
they're the only two, because obviously Nat doesn't need it, and but those two are in contact. Does Yelena do her fighting pose when she drops through the grate, or is that a bit later?
Yeah, when she goes to release the widow.
Release the widow, yeah, and she drops through and does her little fighting pose, brilliantly done.
And then just shudders.
And this is where we get the reveal as well, to Taskmaster revealing herself as the daughter. With Dreykov then sends old Taskmaster away to deal with the quote rats in the basement.
And then it's still a bloke.
Well, when he walks away, and this is where the pheromone lock thing kind of comes in. But we do finally kind of gear up to the big final fight, so to speak. And like I say, it does get a bit of a mess, which is a shame, because again, the rest of the film is so on point. I think the second they decided to go make the Red Room a big floating island, I think that decision's what made it ridiculous. Like, you could have done a volcano base or something like that. It's like in the sea, like a proper Bond villain thing.
I think it had to be something like a flying fortress, purely to explain
why it's never been found.
No one had been able to find any evidence of it whatsoever.
And I guess it kind of tracks that it's like a baddie shield helicarrier,
but I do think that as soon as they made that decision, you know that the end of the film is going to rely on a huge amount of CGI that is going to be very difficult to get right. And it feels like they...
Does it feel like they didn't give them enough time to do it?
I mean, they definitely didn't give them enough time to do it. They didn't have enough money to spend on it, and there are parts of it that were just so clearly rushed. But I think the thing for me is more about the fact that the violence becomes kind of cartoony at this point.
Yes.
So from something that's been so grounded and gritty and dirty and brutal and everything else, all of a sudden it's like a kung fu movie. It's like, it's really clean and clinical, and there's no real impact to anything. And like, people are falling like 3-4 stories down and just going, oof, that hurt, and then carrying on. And then they're like throwing people off buildings and skydiving after them, and it's a tonal shift. It gets completely messy and completely cartoony.
No, like I say, it's the thing I have with this film. It loses it at the end, and it's a shame, because again, it does tar the whole thing, and it shouldn't. And that's possibly why I always had this kind of negative view when I was thinking, I've got to watch this again. But again, it did allow me to really love the rest of it and all the characters and stuff like that. But I guess, well, like I say, we're in the big fight now. We've got Taskmaster has his big fight with Red Guardian. Again, a bit of comedy.
Melina, this is the last time that we... Damn it.
Oh, she's gone. Okay, damn it, kind of thing.
I remember this really vividly from the trailer, because I remember when the trailer first came out, a number of my friends, as well as kind of a lot of noisiness on social media, there was a lot about kind of like freeze framing. They were about like, I don't know, half a second of the Red Guardian Taskmaster fight, and there were people kind of freeze framing it, trying to work out if it was Red Guardian and if it was Taskmaster and if it wasn't. And I remember being very, I mean, like I am with every trailer that comes out, being very lost as to what was going on, being like, yeah, is it Taskmaster? Yeah, it's definitely
I don't know who these
Taskmaster.
people
Of
are,
course it's Taskmaster. But yeah, it was a significant moment that has kind of stuck in my brain from that first trailer that was released. It's a good fight too.
No, it's a good fight. It's good. Again, like I said, I think like most things with Alexia are good fights. I mean,
still a bit cartoony.
A little bit. But I think with those two, well, with Red, because he is a super soldier, I guess it kind of, that's what makes it more cartoony, because he can do the ridiculous thing. He can take a bit of a punch because he's a super soldier, and he can give one as well. Whereas the others are human, and that's what makes it more brutal. But yeah, so he's having his cool fight. Yelena is working her way through guards, getting, you know, to find the actual antidote stuff, the MacGuffins. Melina is doing her thing, hacking computers. It's like they're all doing their skill sets. But Dreykov kind of, you know, works out what she's doing and locks it down. And then Nat does her provoking of Dreykov in a very cool way of provoking him to punching her.
Yeah.
Which
doesn't make any sense to start with. It's like, it's almost like she's just being a bit like contrary. She's just like, well, I'm just going to make you punch me.
Yep.
Almost she doesn't think he's going to punch her, or she's going to use it against him in some way at some point, but it's a bit confusing as to why she's just like not trying to even duck.
Yeah, she's just taking it. But, you know, we find out that there is actually a point to it. And then, so then we kind of, we get our Taskmaster shot again, fighting like all the Avengers, which is very cool. You get a bit of Black Panther in there, you get some I think you get a Captain America move, you get some cool stuff. And it basically bounces between the areas, doesn't it? So we get Dreykov talking about how he's got his Widow army, essentially, who can, you know, the standard baddie thing where my people are everywhere, you know, I can topple kingdoms kind of thing. Essentially, the whole point, obviously, is him to, you know, do his little supervillain monologuing to show him the system and the key and how to unlock it, then sever the nerve, so to speak, you know. So then you find out the reason behind her getting punched in the face is to break the nerve and break the pheromone lock kind of thing. But he does manage to set the alarms off. Melina also does her plan B of just blowing them up, of blowing the engines up. Fair enough. And again, I love the clinical way in which she does it. Yelena, parallel, gets to the winners too late because they're already gone, but immediately picks up a grenade. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm sure we all see what was happening with that, the logic behind that. And then Melina saves Alexei, I think much to his annoyance, by locking Taskmaster in a cell.
Yes.
And yeah, like I said, we jump all over the place at this point, don't we? So then the Widows arrive just before Nat can actually kill Dreykov. He locks the system and gets out. There's a big ass Black Widow versus Black Widows type fight, which is getting a bit more brutal, but still a bit, because it's got all the little random like Widow stings and stuff like that. So as you say, it was a bit more comic-y.
Yeah, it was a little bit over the top, wasn't it? Like it felt like there were too many Widows.
Yeah, it's almost like not quite. We're not going to the level of Agent Neo versus Neo versus Agent Smith. The millions of them, where there's way too many.
Yes,
but it was also, if they'd had less, it possibly would have been a more brutal fight.
Yeah, I feel like if you'd had like 6 or 8, maybe you could have got away with it. But like there were about, I don't know, 15, 20.
Yeah, like it could have been a cool.
And there's no way even that
it's taking them all down. Whereas, like you say, if there'd have been a few less, it could have been a brutal fight that she is going to lose, but bring it close, which still means Yelena can, you know, as you say, come in at the last minute like she does, and you just see the grenade explode and boom, red gas goes everywhere and they're all free.
And again, it's like it feels like a cop out to me.
Yeah.
That like
I saw it coming a mile off.
Yelena is obviously going to get there before the end, but I would have quite liked Yelena to get there and start fighting.
Yeah, like almost
rather than it just being like oh well, like she's in trouble, so I'm just gonna free them all.
Yeah, like almost like Nat's being, like I say, when they're at the end of it, where they're just basically holding her down and beating her. if then suddenly Yelena kind of dives from off screen and knocks one out, and then they kind of do a bit of a back-to-back punchy, and then manage to trigger the grenade or something like that.
Yes, exactly. A nice character moment between the two of them fighting as sisters and stuff.
But
I'd have
ironically,
loved to see
hilariously, if that had happened, I suspect in my head I'd be thinking, why did you just throw a grenade and knock them all, do it all at once?
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true. Maybe someone could have tripped her over as she went in. So
maybe there should have been something else that they needed to, like, I don't know, something to make it work. Yeah, whatever. But either way,
the other thing
freezable.
I did find quite funny about this fight is I'm sure right at the beginning when they start having a scrap, I'm sure the Wilhelm scream is in there, which is hilarious because it's a very male scream.
Maybe it's one of the random dudes who was one of the random male grunts with the guns.
It just made me chuckle. I was like, what? Hey?
Yeah.
Who? Okay, cool. And that's, so at this point, this is where we're into like full on.
It's all falling apart now. It's all a mess now, but yes.
This is where they're sort of rushing to get out there. Nat collects all of the data from Dreykov's system.
Yep.
We know she's very good at collecting data.
She's good at it. Always back up your data.
Times.
Yeah.
And she scoops up the last of the like vials of the cure gas thing.
There's
I didn't see where she got those from.
When Yelena's wands exploded, they didn't all go off.
Right.
Because they landed on the floor. And
cool.
It's very kind of apparent that there's two that she picks up.
I saw that it was just the two.
Yep.
But I didn't see them like dropping or anything. And so my brain was just like, so you've thrown a grenade with all of these gas vials and yet somehow two of them have just randomly survived.
Basically, yeah.
But obviously that is kind of true, but I don't mind it so much if you've seen them fall to the floor. And I just hadn't noticed that bit. So I'll let them off of the many sins that they have created in the last 20 minutes of this film.
It's just the CGI. It's a shame. But yeah, so they're all...
It's not just the CGI.
I guess it's all just the fact. It just feels like it goes off the rails, doesn't it?
Things in here that, like, yes, it's messy.
It is. No, it is messy. Again,
it keep coming back to messy.
It just is messy, and it's just, like I say, it's just a shame. And I'm absolutely trying, like I say, not let it ruin the rest of the great film.
Yes.
But yeah, like I say, Melina and Alexei are escaping together. You know, they're still quite happily looking around for the girls, and they even tried to go back. But then the plane kind of gets crippled, so they disappear from the scene now until the end.
And it's a good way of getting rid of them, but it's also a good way of repeating that whole thing of actually, however fake they may tell themselves,
but they are really
things
family.
Were actually there is a family link between all of them. Then
we get Nat releasing randomly Taskmaster, and just before they start to fight again, she falls out, and like the thing, because you know, like the thing's falling apart, and it will stay together long enough in the right points, and then it will just randomly start falling apart again. And
well, that's what happens when giant floaty ships.
I mean, that's a very film thing where it's very plot heavy, as in it'll explode as soon as it needs to. It's like the cavalry arrives just at the right moment. But that's I can't really fault that, because that's a very cinema thing to do, isn't it? But she sees then Yelena kind of destroying Dreykov's ship, and then Nat, as you say, runs and grabs that convenient parachute that's sitting on the side.
And the whole Yelena destroying that ship. Oh my goodness! Her, like,
is it the CGI where it explodes and she just
like
floops
the
backwards?
Tiniest little explosion. It's like a, and oh dear, yes. And then Nat flies off after her. In, you know, the difficulty that they have with things like this is when they made Iron Man 2.
Yep.
They did an incredible falling out of the sky sequence.
Yep.
And once you have seen what it looks like when you're doing it for real, it shows you how stupid it looks when they do it fake.
Yep.
And I just think there are a lot of very good examples of films with CGI and stuff like that, particularly hidden CGI.
Yeah.
That you don't notice is there because it's shot as though you would shoot something if it were actually happening kind of right in front of you.
Yeah.
And so this is a perfect example of that, because you can't film from right in front of an actor's face when they're falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
And obviously that makes it really difficult, because
Yes.
you want to be able to see the actors doing stuff, but at the same time it takes all of the risk and the jeopardy and the everything else out of it, because even apart from really badly green screened stuff, there's just no drama to it.
I mean, like, not every film can be Mission Impossible with a Tom Cruise jumping out of a plane and stuff like that. Halo
It's
jumping
true.
out.
It's true.
You can't all do it. Yeah.
But even that film contained quite a lot of visual effects.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying
Like,
that. But
he
again,
did jump out of the plane, but
Yes.
a lot of everything else was...
like, the lightning was added, all that kind of stuff. Of course,
Exactly.
Of course there's CGI. But as you say, it's that blending of practical and CGI, which what makes it so good.
Exactly.
this
And I
wasn't
think
that.
if you're going to spend money on CGI, why not get a really good aerial shot of a stunt double?
Yes.
And like you've already shown earlier in this, it is theoretically possible to do face replacements.
Absolutely.
And face replacements are working really well now. And so why not use that instead of trying to film it in a way that everybody knows just looks really fake?
Yeah. And like I say, this scene is where they're all essentially falling and fighting, and it's very much like landing on bits of wreckage which are flying down still and sliding off it, and they fight, they fall, they don't die. They have a nice little final kind of showdown on the ground, which is still quite cool when they're actually on the ground, and then the inevitable happens, and Nat gasses her, and basically takes her out of the fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
And all of a sudden she's like, oh.
I mean, I guess if you've been essentially mind controlled for a very, very long time, then you're going to be a bit out of it when you kind of like get released. So she just leaves her.
And if you suddenly realise you're
a baddie,
turns out you're a woman, not a man.
But yeah, then we
Wait,
get
hold
the
on. I
sisterly
spent
moment.
all this time thinking I was a man going after everyone,
and now I'm not. But yeah, and then then we get the nice sisterly, Nat asking Yelena for forgiveness and saying, the payoff for the line, it was real for her as well.
Yes. As they're sort of recovering on the ground, the two of them, and we see Alexei and Melina coming over towards them as well, and they're sort of recovering from falling out of the sky.
Yes.
And Ross arrives with this kind of giant kind of
big convoy.
I can't think of the word, column of vehicles. And Nat kind of says, like, you guys should run away because they're coming after me anyway and I can deal with stuff. So it's a very sort of self-sacrificing version of Nat here.
And kind of, like you say, it's, as she says, well, if I know our family can work, maybe I should go help my other one. And gives her the motivation to go sort the Avengers out, kind of thing, and make things up, patch things up, essentially.
Yeah. But this is where she gets given the vest.
Yes, with all the pockets. By
Yelena here. Nat gives Yelena the vials of the gas, or the vial, the remaining vial, so that Melina can go and copy it, and they can free all of the rest of the widows around the world, which will come back around again at some point. And the widows who were freed and escaped fly back down, and they collect Alexei, Melina, Yelena, and Antonia. I don't understand why Nat doesn't get on.
Yeah, I don't understand either. She could have.
Why does she not fly away with them? They could have dropped her, like, a mile up the road.
Yeah, I don't know, but because then, especially as like we flash forward 2 weeks later, and Nat's obviously not in prison.
Yes,
because she's obviously either done a deal or got out.
She magicked herself away.
Yeah, I don't know, but I literally that came to me earlier. I was like, oh yeah, did she not get captured, or did she run up? Did she check? I don't know. Did she escape straight away? Who knows?
It was so weird.
Yeah, it was so weird. But now she's got her Avengers kind of Infinity War haircut, hasn't she?
Yes.
So she's cut and coloured her hair, and then we see Mason as well, and who's giving her a Quinjet, which I think is also implied that obviously that's going to be the Quinjet that they're using, you know, the hidden Avengers in Infinity War.
Yes, when they go to Edinburgh and
yes,
collect
exactly, yes,
from the train station.
Yes, for that awesome reveal. And yeah, then she obviously makes the reference of breaking a few of her family out of prison. So that's and then it kind of good. Then that's the credits.
That takes us to the credits,
and in particular the only one fairly small kind of is it mid or after? No, it's mid credits, isn't it? I can't remember when it went.
Cannot remember. I think it is mid.
I think it's mid. I hit skip credits. I think that's what I did.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But,
so it skips credits, so it doesn't. You don't know where it landed.
Exactly, we don't know.
But I think it's mid.
But yeah, Yelena then goes to Nat's grave, and I think it's under the pink blossom tree type thing, which got mentioned, where he said about the mother being buried. I said I don't think that's where her mother's buried, but it was a nice little thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's in Ohio. Is it?
I have no idea.
I don't, just because I again literally watching it like recently, the panning up and down of the trees and the leaves, it looked very similar to the start of the film, but I don't know. Either way,
it's definitely not the same place that it was at the start of the film.
No. But it's in the Midwest because
they specify.
All you know is it's the Midwest because Valentina says she's allergic to the Midwest. But
so
yeah,
presumably that means it is meant to be Ohio.
I think it is. But either way, we're met by Valentina, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
There you go. I can't pronounce things. Who's her employer? And we don't get much from her except that she offers her a shot at the man responsible for her sister's death, and then there's a picture of Clint Barton, which
rude,
which is a lead into the Hawkeye TV show.
It is.
And we get again Florence in there being amazing.
Yes, absolutely. The delicacy of having to switch from the deep sorrow of going to visit your sister's graveside.
Yep.
To then, and I've always sort of got the feeling that Yelena never saw her again.
Well, because I think she gets dusted.
Yes, of course she did. Yes.
I think she gets dusted, so she would never have seen. So she just not, because otherwise, if she hadn't got dusted, you'd know she'd be full well with Nat doing the thing. Like, I mean, obviously, I know in the film they hadn't established her yet, but there's no way she wouldn't have had her sister there with her. I don't think, because especially after they've made up. So I think they all got dusted.
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
So you've got this difficulty of playing the kind of deep sorrow of going to visit your sister's grave, and it's obviously something she takes really seriously. You get the impression that she's the one that keeps putting fresh things on the grave and everything else. And then all of a sudden you've got to switch from that into this sort of semi-comedic scene with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who is coming at it from a deeply different perspective. And yes, as you say, it's just Florence Pugh being absolutely amazing again. It's one of the few things, this film in particular is one of the few times that I get cross with kind of comic book movies, but also just kind of large scale action movies being ignored by award shows.
Yeah, I see. Actually,
I think Florence Pugh's performance in this film is worthy of
recognition,
acting nominations in BAFTAs, Oscars, Emmys, all those kind of things. I would love to have seen her rewarded for this, but because it's a Marvel film, because it's a comic book movie, because it's an action movie, all of a sudden acting performances don't count anymore.
Yeah, I know. It is a big double standard, isn't it? It is ridiculous.
And, it is rare that you get a performance as nuanced as Florence Pugh is in this. but just because it's rare doesn't mean we should just ignore it.
Exactly, you should celebrate it when it's there.
But most of the time, these aren't worth it, so let's just not bother.
Yeah.
So, in summary, it's so good. This film, it's so good until the last 30 minutes.
Literally, it's such a good film. It's just the CGI mess at the end. It just takes it down a notch, and that's a shame. And that's why I'm still happy with my thumbs up for it, because I don't think the rest of the film should be penalised for them dropping the ball at the end.
Yes. And in fact, I was just having a quick look on at the thumbnails on Disney Plus. It's not even the last 30 minutes, it's the last 20 minutes of the film, and it shoots itself in the foot with both barrels from 2 inches, both feet at the same time, with laser blasters and everything. It's such a shame. So disappointing, but it's really hard to not give this a thumbs up when you actually think through all of the amazingness that came before it.
And like, it is really why I'm really pleased that we are doing this in a way, because it means that, like I say, I got to revisit this, and I now, I really loved it. Like, I'm really glad we got to watch it through again.
And I don't know how many times we have actually mentioned it in the recordings that have gone out so far, but there have been plenty of times we've been looking ahead to the movies we've got coming up, and I've gone, I've got to watch Black Widow again, as in out loud to you while we're on a call. We both keep doing it with Eternals actually in the episodes themselves, but this was definitely one of the ones I was least looking forward to rewatching, and it is now up there with some of my favourites. It can't be at the top of the list.
Of course not, because you still can't.
Because you still have to. Yes, exactly. You still have to stick the landing.
Yes, exactly. That is part of it. Sticking the landing is still part of it. Yes,
but it is great. It is really, really good. And that's our show for this week. If you want to rewatch along with us next week, we'll be talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
You can follow our show at MarvelingPod on Instagram, TikTok and YouTube, or email us your thoughts on geeks@marvelingpod.com.
And if you enjoyed the show, we'd love you to tell just one other person about it. That's all. Just one. Go on, do it now while you're on your phone anyway.
And that's it. Thanks very much, Ollie.
Thanks very much, Dave.